I'm trying a new video mode. The Strokes, New York City rock band, around since the early 2000s. One of my favorite bands of all time. I've been into them since I saw the 1251 music video. I went to see them on their First Impressions of Earth tour with my older sister, who I had to thank for getting me into the Strokes in the first place. I was in 9th grade, it was 2006. They completely shaped what I think about music. I continued following them after that through First Impressions, Angles. I'm actually a big defender of Angles. I love that album. Come Down Machine, New Abnormal, after that long break. Then they took another long break and now they're back with new music. I'm excited. I listened to Going Shopping, which had a cool release system that involved mailing out a cassette to people who signed up. This was actually announced on their Instagram out of the blue with this image here. Now, my vegan brain was already raising some flags with the depiction of a horse being used as a means of transportation. A depiction of animals, sentient beings, being exploited against their will. Now, I know it's just a digital representation. I can calm down. But if we were to think of other forms of exploitation, even if they're done in a digital, artful way, would we accept that as an album announcement or just to build some hype? So that was already kind of making me feel a little uneasy, but I was excited with the cassette tape that they sent out. There were Reddit threads about people receiving this cassette tape that was titled Going Shopping and people scrambling to find a cassette player so they could rip the audio and put it up on YouTube for fans to listen to and enjoy. It was a fun day and I enjoyed following the band through this new single release. But the following day was a little less exciting for me. They released their album title, the release date, the producer, Rick Rubin again, and the album art, which looks like this. It's a stark image. It's a human mounted on a horse, saddled in place with reins around the horse's face and body. A full, very on-the-nose representation of human dominance over another being. I never thought I'd feel this way about a band that I've loved for years, especially because their album covers are so abstract and geometric and artful and tasteful. And now here we have a clear depiction of human domination over another animal. It's more than just an album cover. It's a reflection of how humans still see other animals as ours to control. I went on the forums, I went in the comment sections, and nobody's causing a fuss. Nobody's really bothered that there is a depiction of animal exploitation on the album cover. When a band I admire uses this imagery, it shows how normalized it is in our culture to see animals as just another mode of entertainment or transportation or exercise. We need to question these subtle messages that appear oftentimes without us even realizing it and recognize that animals exist for themselves, not for humans. And I think I know part of what might be going on here. A lot of people, even so-called vegans who are on a plant-based diet but might have a different understanding of veganism as some sort of suffering calculation where the less suffering there is, the more acceptable that form of exploitation is. I think that's a very prevalent idea even among plant-based dieters who call themselves vegan. They might see this image and think that it's not as bad as other forms of exploitation. For example, foie gras or fur, just to name a couple of common targets. The issue with this thinking is that it doesn't recognize that the injustice comes from the perception of other animals that we have. So it doesn't become wrong when we cross that boundary. It becomes wrong when we perceive them as belonging to us in the first place. And then, of course, when we cross that boundary, it's on a level playing field. All forms of exploitation towards other animals are equally bad as each other because they're rooted in the same oppressive mindset. And that's what needs to be challenged. That's what needs to be put into question. That's actually the root of all of this. So we can't, as vegan activists, say that one form of exploitation is worse than another. We can't send that false message out there. It confuses people into thinking that as long as animals are fed, kept safe, well managed, taken care of, then it's okay to use them for our purposes. When we wouldn't accept that in a human context. We wouldn't say that now that you are feeding and clothing and keeping someone in shelter, now you're going to exploit them, put them to work forcefully, and just restrict their freedom. Really, a lot of this has to do with freedom and the absence of freedom when we keep someone for the purposes that we have intended for them. When we're clothing them, when we're sheltering them, feeding them, and caring for them because we want to take something from them, that's when it becomes wrong. Anyway, my point is we need to be careful about the messages that we're sending and recognize this as equally bad to any other form of animal exploitation. Otherwise, we're sending a welfarist message instead of an abolitionist and principled message that crossing the boundary of using and exploiting an animal for any purpose is when it becomes wrong, equally wrong to all other forms of exploitation, regardless of whether there is any suffering. So, coming back to the album cover, I'm disappointed, Strokes. Come on, Nikolai. We have the same birthday. You should have spoken up. I'm surprised that 5 of them didn't object to this. I do understand that there is one artist who's responsible for the art direction, and this artist took this image from another older artist. So I think it's all bad. The person who took the photo and the person who's deciding to use this as the Strokes album cover, we just wouldn't accept it if it was an old image of a human being exploited. We need to see this as equally bad because it's rooted in the same core idea that one group exists to serve another based on some trait that's arbitrary, like race, religion, gender, or species in this case. There are differences between humans and other species, but the differences are not enough for us to treat them as property and restrict their freedoms and use them for our purposes. We have enough similarities in terms of loving our families, loving our freedom, loving our own autonomy, that it should be recognized as just as wrong to enslave an animal as it is wrong to enslave a human. Anyway, big tangent. The Strokes, you gotta do better. I hope this album is good. I'll still be seeing you play live later this year on the Reality Awaits tour. But you gotta drop it with these depictions of literal animal slavery. I know you can do better. And we as vegans gotta be calling this stuff out just as much as if it was an image of a slaughterhouse or a duck being force-fed to get a fatty liver sold as a delicacy called foie gras, or a mink being anally electrocuted so that we can use her pelt and call it fur as a luxury fashion item. It's all wrong. It's all equally wrong. It all stems from the same source, and that source is what needs to be eradicated. Let's get to work, people.